Everybody, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I am your host, Chef AJ, and this is the show where I introduce you to amazing people just like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Apologize for starting a bit late today. Our internet was down. We weren't sure we were even going to have a show, at least at this time, but thank goodness Frontier got it up and running, so we are back. This should be a really fun show today because I have two really fun guys. They're not only comedians, but they're vegan. They're vegan comedians, and they've been on the road for a long time. And they're going to tell you how they were able to manage the vegan diet, being on the road, and not only manage the diet, but still stay true to being able to exercise every single day. They have this really cool system that they're going to tell you about. They've both been on Johnny Carson. You can watch their clips on YouTube. They're hilarious. I've seen them both perform live in Vegas. They're just outstanding comedians. They've had a lifelong friendship that they're probably going to talk about too. So please welcome to the show, Steve Mittleman and Mark Schiff. Thanks so much for being here, guys. This should be fun.
This is a long time coming. This is a long time coming for sure, but we're very thrilled to be here.
Yeah, Mark, I didn't meet you until last September when you were performing we had the conference, the Ultimate Weight Loss Conference, and Steve took me to your show. And Steve knows this about me, that because I have a writer's mind, I don't laugh out loud that much, but you had me laughing out loud.
That's right. I was behind you and you were really laughing.
That's right.
That was in Las Vegas at the Tropicana, maybe? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It was a great night, and that was a great gig, and it was nice to meet you there. And you know, after the shows, I like to eat, and you happen to have a couple of warm baked potatoes in your pocketbook. What a beautiful thing, you know? I mean, it's very rare that somebody comes backstage and says, "Would you like a warm baked potato?" You know, when I first started, women used to come back for other things, but now it's warm baked potatoes. It's a whole different.
I remember going to, we went to, what is that called? Sweet Tomatoes? Was that where we went with Charles?
Mm-hmm.
After, and you went nuts for the potatoes.
That's probably one of the reasons they had to close, is I was stealing all the potatoes.
Do you have a little warmer? Do you have a little warmer in your purse that actually kept it warm? I mean, how did it happen in there? Did you have a little Bunsen burner going in there?
It's amazing. I really miss the soup plantation. It was the real draw of moving to Indio was the soup plantation. Now it's not there anymore. So
They went out of business.
yeah, it's too bad. I understand why, but it's too bad.
It was the word. It was the word plantation that.
Things have changed.
Yeah, things have changed.
Things have changed.
And probably because I stole all their tomatoes and potatoes. So you guys, people might not know this, but you guys actually had weight issues before going vegan. Isn't that true?
Yeah, actually, Mark, we know each other at our heaviest, right? Mark, unless you were heavier before I met you, I don't know.
I was an up and downer.
Yeah.
Up down. I was an escalator.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a picture. I'm going to try and show you one of my pictures. You're going to look. No, iPad, share. I'm going to go share. There we go. Look, there. Can you see me?
No.
Share. I'm going to go share. Now share. Oh, darn it.
It always works in rehearsal, doesn't it?
Yeah, it did. AJ, do you have it there? Me with glasses?
Let me go find it. I wasn't ready for this.
And then
Here. Okay. If you unscreen share, I can show your picture.
Hold on one second.
On my phone. I don't know if you guys can see this.
Oh my goodness.
The world is looking.
Can you guys see how heavy Steve was?
That was me. Look at that. That's a headshot. My first headshot.
Yeah. Look at the difference before vegan. Here's another one.
Go. Classic.
Unbelievable.
Okay. And I've got a few of Mark. I don't know why Mark is so muddy, but there he is.
I was in Israel there at the Dead Sea, and they have mud baths.
Right. Yeah. You can see how much heavier Mark was. And when I was watching them on the Tonight Show, the clips, you could see how much heavier they were.
Oh, yeah.
Mark, so how did you decide, and why did you decide, and when did you decide to go vegan?
Okay, so what happened was I went vegetarian 30 years ago. I quit eating meat. One thing at a time. I quit the beef, then the chicken, and the turkey, and the fish. I became a vegetarian, but I became a fat vegetarian. I ate pizza and drank Coke and French fries, and there was all vegetarian, and I became fat. So somewhere in there, I decided to become a vegan. I'd read about it, and I lasted for about 2 years. I couldn't take it anymore. It was just too much for me at that point in my life. So I went back to vegetarian, and then about 7 years ago, I decided to go back to vegan.
Nice.
And it's been an easy. It's not been a problem now at all.
Wait, more than that,
I've been
Mark.
interested in this my whole life. Like even when I was 16 years old, 17, I bought a juicer, with my own money. So it's something I was always interested in.
Yeah.
Did you have any health challenges or just overweight?
Yeah, I had high blood pressure at 18, high cholesterol at 18, depression, lethargy, fat dripping off of me. So, yeah, I was ready to have a stroke. And I was going to doctors and doing anything to help it. And then I decided vegetarian, but vegetarian still didn't do it for me, the way I ate. Still didn't drop the blood pressure, didn't drop the cholesterol. And exercise helped a little, but still didn't do it. And the vegan helped. And then finally adding meditation. And I do take a little bit of a drug. So the combination of everything has got the blood pressure and the cholesterol in really good shape.
And the heroin, right?
Yeah. But I exercise 7 days a week, and I meditate twice a day.
That makes sense. Do you ever talk about veganism in any of your sets, in any of your comedy sets?
No, I don't talk about being a vegetarian or all that. Although I've thought about it, but it just hasn't struck me as I just haven't figured out any routines on it. But I do talk about losing weight, somewhat. Losing weight. How when you lose weight, it scares people. People think you're actually dying when you lose weight. People can't conceive that a human being actually is doing this on their own. They think you have to have some horrible disease in order to drop some weight. This is a true story. This woman, she saw me in a supermarket and she flinched. When she saw me, she went, ah! And she had heard that I lost all this weight and I died. She heard I died. And she said, Mark, I like you. You've always been a good friend. I care about you. I love you. And I was so sad that I heard that you died. And I said, well, thank you. And then I realized what kind of friend it is. She didn't even come to my funeral. She didn't even come to, call my house and tell my wife she was sorry. She's no friend.
Mark, you did that in reverse to me because you said, Mark, Walter Gertz, who owned
the Improvs.
The Improvs in Chicago, Mark, and I loved the guy. He loved me. I was there twice a year for many years. And Mark goes, Steve, I heard Walter Gertz died. And then, we're talking like 15 years ago. And then Griff and we were at Nate and Al's like a year later. And in walks Walter Gertz. We're on our way out. He's on the way in. And we were like, oh my God, I was so happy to see him, but I was in shock. I almost died seeing him. So
same thing happened to me when I saw him. I flinched. I thought he was dead.
You heard from somebody else. Yeah, it's funny.
Don't start rumors, AJ. No rumors.
Absolutely. Well, so how do you guys maintain veganism on the road and an exercise routine? Because the vegan part is hard enough, but how do you exercise? You're probably in little flea bag hotels and going from one gig to another.
I think between the two of us, we've worked out, I probably 200 different hotel gyms, but they go from really the most amazing places in the world, 5-star resorts, to one disgusting looking, but something, when you're done working out in that disgusting little ratty hotel, and either on an elliptical or a treadmill, or it's an amazing feeling. You go, it's just as good. You got your workout. So can I just say our backstory a little bit?
Of course.
So Mark and I were, first of all, we've known each other since basically the day I started in comedy, which is the summer of '76. And, you know, we became very close friends really fast. And, you know, there were certain changes that happened. Mark, if I can just say, you gave up alcohol and getting stoned, right? And all that. Yeah. And I wasn't quite there yet, but my dad had a stroke at 60. I'm 64 now. My dad had a stroke and 4 heart attacks. And that woke me up a great deal. But my weight issue was like Mark had, you know, up and down, up and down. And, but about 12 years ago, Mark and I were on the phone together, and I didn't even know who said it, but we said we should call each other once we finish exercising, wherever we are in the world, because we both travel the world. Let's call each other, and it'll be a motivational factor for the next guy, whoever gets the phone call in the morning. And Mark was earlier usually than I am, but I got much better at it in the last, I don't know, year or so. Get it done early and call the other guy and say, I'm done. Basically, that was the key, the premise 12 years ago. I'm done. And we call each other out of 365 days a year, 362 of them. You know, we hardly miss a date. And again, we call each other worldwide. Doesn't matter, on a cruise ship, Israel, Italy, Hawaii, you know, all over. Doesn't matter where we are. And then like 3 weeks after we started, Mark said, hey, Bernie, who's a friend of both, mutual friend of ours, an old friend, he is on this too. We call each other. So I make 2 calls, Mark makes 2 calls, Bernie makes 2 calls, usually ideally in the morning. And that's how we do it. And if we're not going to work out, we call each other to say, hey, we're not working out. So we take it seriously, and the food too. So there you go. Mark, you can
calling somebody every day gives you accountability.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm done. It's a short call. A couple of other people have tried to join the group, but they didn't make it.
No.
Drop out. They can't take it.
Want this. You really got to want this.
You can't take they can't take the accountability every day of going to somebody, I'm done, you know?
Yeah.
So,
It's so true what you guys say about accountability, and that's enabled you to be consistent and sustain these healthy habits. Did you guys ever lie though and call the other and say, I'm done, but you really didn't do it?
No.
I have not exercised in 12 years, not once. I single phone call.
Honestly, but we have the out, like I was saying before. We'll call each other and go, I'm not doing it. My back hurts. I didn't sleep well, which shouldn't be an excuse, but the back is a good excuse. But we don't, there's an out. It's just, it's the continuity of every day. You know, it's really simple. It's every day. We call each other yay or nay, but there's probably very few days a year that we don't exercise.
Shavuos. We don't lie about it. The only time I want to lie is when my weight goes up.
Yeah.
That's the only time I seriously want to become a giant liar.
But you're accountable today. You weren't happy with your weight, you know?
No.
So yeah, you're much better at the scale than I am. I'd like the once a month plan, and you're like every day.
Yeah, right now I'm in my office, and I have this little office I go to outside the house, and I don't have a bed. I don't have a couch, and I got a little tiny refrigerator and no food in it except what I bring in for lunch. At home, it's very difficult for me because the couch I want to lay down, and the refrigerator goes, Mom, come and get me.
Yeah.
And it's you know, I put on like 4 pounds, and a guy like me, you know, it's insidious. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
We'll become 8 becomes 16, and you know, I'm wearing robes.
I think it's amazing that you guys not only supported each other in these healthy habits, but I was listening to some podcasts that you were in yesterday, the Carson podcast, and you guys always supported each other as comedians. If one was successful, you were in the audience. And I know that like in show business or any career, people are often very competitive, but you guys were always happy for each other when you got a gig like that.
Very much, very much. I remember Mark coming to my Carson tapings. We went on vacation one time after one of the tapings. We went to each other's.
Europe.
What's that?
I took Steve to Europe.
Yeah, that's true. That's
the most romantic 2 weeks I ever had in my life.
By far. Mark was opening up for all these acts and traveling the country, and he had all these frequent flyer miles. And he said, I'm going to cash in miles, let's go. And we went, we started off in Paris, then we went to Bonn, which is in the center of France. Then we went through Switzerland, then we went through Italy. And it is maybe to this day, the most romantic trip I've ever had in my life.
Let me tell you, comedians, you asked an interesting question about comedians supporting each other. Comedians, I believe, are the least neurotic of all people in show business, okay? Because we work more than anybody else in show business. Even when, an actor can't just get up on stage every night. A dancer can't just start dancing in front of people. But comedians, we have the showcase clubs, we can do little gigs here or there. So we can stay sharp and know we have a talent. And supporting your friends, everybody's so different in this business. It's different styles, different things. It's always been, we grew up in an environment in comedy was incredibly supportive.
Yeah.
Everybody really, really nice for the most part.
I hear it's changed though. The people are not as, one of the greatest feelings is when I go to a club and I bump into a comic and they'll after they're done with their show, they'll go, you gave me that joke 4 years ago. It kills for me. It's one of the greatest feelings that I can have is, that, and that happens a lot. It's happened. I'm a member of the Magic Castle. So I've gone in LA a lot, and the magicians will go, you gave me a joke 5 years ago and I've been doing it. It kills. It's just the greatest feeling to do.
AJ, you know the comedian Richard Belzer, the actor Richard Belzer?
Absolutely, yes.
One night, Richard Belzer was on the Bob Costas show. He had a talk show, Costas. And Costas asked Belzer, he says, who's like a really bad comedian that, that you work with? Really bad. Belzer said, I really don't want to say, it's not right. And Costas says, come on. He goes, well, the truth is Steve Mittleman and Mark Schiff are the worst comedians I've ever seen in my life.
I want to tweak what your story is. I don't know if I'm intercepting your story, but he said that the two comics that I didn't think were funny, but ended up making it. You know what I mean? They became great comics. And that was
he lumped me and Steve together as two of the worst comics he ever saw in his life when we first started out.
When we first started, which was true. But when you talk about, how supportive we were, so when we started, there was no stage time. It was like 2 a.m, literally 2 a.m. And sometimes, and I lived around the corner from the club, and Mark lived around the corner from the club. I would go on the waitresses put the chairs up and they were vacuuming, and there was nobody except the waitresses vacuuming. That was my audience. And just my reflection in the mirror in the back of the room. Right. And that was stage time for us. But Mark, when I started, I had a burger every day for like the first 2 years, sometimes shrimp scampi, if they were in a good mood at Catch a Rising Star. And Mark, by the way, I would have a burger at the comic strip like every night. And guess who the chef was? Mark Schiff.
I was the chef there. Cakes and chops and burgers and all that stuff.
Burgers for everybody.
My family still eats chicken and turkey and fish, and I will cook it for them.
I will say, AJ certainly knows my girlfriend very well, and we met on veggieconnection.com, Linda and I. And I feel very blessed to have her in my life, of course. And I don't think I could be in the environment that you are in, taking care of the food for your family while you were eating completely diametrically opposed to how they ate, you know?
Yeah, no, I do. And it doesn't bother me. They can eat anything they want.
Yeah.
You know, it's the way it is. You got to leave people alone. Do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I agree. We're powerless over others, but it is an amazing, how should I say, it's a lot easier for me that Linda and I are on the same page.
Absolutely. It would be easier for me too. I agree.
Well, Mark, I can always hook you up.
There you go.
So you guys, has comedy changed since you guys started out? I mean, how do you feel about today's younger comedians? Are you like, God, they're great, or I mean, what's it like? And not that you guys are the OG, but I mean, you know.
Well, now it totally flipped in the sense of if somebody was blue, you were like, they stuck out. You know what I mean? There was a guy, Jack Raymond, when we started, who was filthy. And I can't even quote his stuff, but he was hysterical. But he was really the exception. You know, there were like 2 or 3 guys that were the exception. Certain bits that Gilbert Gottfried did, who was an old friend of ours. But they were the exception. And now the clean act, sadly, is somewhat the exception. And Mark and I started clean, stayed clean. We just didn't. I don't know. I think all our influences, sadly, may he rest in peace, Carl Reiner, and you know, my first people that I loved were, you know, Nichols and May, and you know, the 2,000-Year-Old Man, and you know, Alan Sherman, and all that stuff. But it was clean. You know, nobody. It was more challenging to be clean. So I think that's the biggest change.
Is it different now with the climate of the world about what you can and cannot talk about these days?
Yeah, that makes a big difference. But one of the big changes too, let me say, is that comedians now, and there's some very funny people out there, tell their story as opposed to do observations or do funny stuff. You know, there's a lot of talk about their horrible childhoods and alcoholism and the beatings and, you know, sexual molestations. There's a lot of that stuff. So they do specials and they tell their story. So you can go 5 minutes in those specials without hearing a laugh. And they build these niche audiences rather than go out to try to get everybody. Like when I go out on stage, I try to reach everybody that's out there. I'm not looking to build a little, but that's one of the things that is different now. People weren't willing to tell their private stories like they are now.
Yeah, it's like a gimme for people now. Everybody. I mean, I love telling stories, but I don't think I'm telling those kind of stories.
No.
I mean, I would say that if I was to get into that category now, that I was remarkably depressed. And I would say that being plant-based, certainly, and exercising and doing things right, totally rearranged my brain. You know, that thing, potatoes over Prozac. I believe it's true. And I was suicidal. That's how depressed I was for a long time. My childhood, my 20s. And I'd have to say, we had a remarkably close friend, Mark Center, who took his life, who was a comic. And Mark said one of the most profound things I ever heard in my life to this day, and that was he bought the lies. You know, he bought the lies. And I think, sadly, with depression, your mind is just telling you so many things. You either have to see your mind doing it and not buy the lies, or you can buy your mind hook, line, and sinker. But I think being on a high nutrient based diet, really, I'm a lot happier as a person. for sure.
You know, this COVID-19 actually has made it difficult. At first, it wasn't difficult. It's been difficult now because I haven't performed live in months, and it's starting to wear on me. So I am starting to feel some sadness come on. And so I have to work harder on my exercise and my writing, on the things that I can do, and not focus on what I can't do.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever feel pressure as comedians, like to be funny? Because, you know, when you think about it, like you meet, maybe you're at a party and you meet people. What do you do for a living? I'm a comedian. When you meet somebody and they say, you know, I'm a surgeon, you don't say, oh, well, let me see you take a gallbladder out. But I hear with comedians, like people, like even now, people are probably expecting you to be funny. But so do you ever find like pressure to just be funny when you don't feel like it?
So the other day I was on your block, because we only live a block and a half away. Right? Maybe a block and a half. And you know, the crew that hangs out on your block, I had them laughing for like a good 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. And they didn't know, I don't think they knew I was a comedian. So it was like really true, honest laughs. Sometimes people are like nice to you and generous when they know you're a comedian.
Wow.
Just laugh. You know what I mean? They'll tweak it. But I had this group of people laughing. They didn't know what I did for a living. It was great. And anyway,
How do I get the gig?
what's that?
How do I get that gig?
You just gotta walk the block. You just gotta walk the block. That's what I was doing.
Yeah, you know, I try to be funny amongst my friends and stuff like that. Why not?
Yeah. You are a remarkably funny guy, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But you know, but people have to understand that comedy is also a craft, because I know I was class clown. There are people I know that are really funny, but yet they can't do stand up.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I don't know, Linda, I tell Linda I'm a little shy. I know AJ, you're kind of shy. You think you are introverted, but you're an extrovert when you have to be, right? I think that's kind of it for me, but I've evolved because I was the guy in school. I knew I had a funny mind because I would whisper to my friends something funny and they would say it and get the big laugh. But I knew, you know, I was the generator, you know, so that's how I kind of learned that I was funny.
My teachers would say to me when I would raise my hand to answer a question, the teacher would say, "You're going to answer the question, or you're going to try to be funny." I get that all the time from the teachers.
Yeah.
And I would actually say to them, "I don't know. We'll see what happens."
Were you guys class clown? Because I was voted class clown in junior high every year and high school. And I was always being sent to the principal's office. And the problem is I was so funny. The principal's like, what am I going to do? You're cracking me up, kid. Yeah. And I remember I was in high school and I'm dyslexic. So I had a really hard time with math. And the math teacher, Mr. Anderson, I remember, he goes, look, just forget the math, forget the science, and just be a comedian. He actually told me that. He wrote that in my yearbook. Yeah.
Wow. That's a compliment and a half. But you did go into comedy for how many years were you doing comedy, AJ?
Yeah, I never committed to it like you guys, and I'm going to tell you the reason why, and that's my next question. I can't deal with the heckling. I experience that now being on YouTube. It's not really heckling, it's just people saying really vile things. But how do you guys deal with it? Because, you know, I think about like what happened to Michael Richards, and I wouldn't know how to deal with it. And I mean, not that do you know what I'm trying to say is like, when I'm being attacked, I want to lash back, but that doesn't make you endeared to the audience.
Well, what basically we're talking, the through line here is food and diet and all that stuff. When you start, you don't really know what to do usually. But basically, as the years go by and you sort of mature at this, almost every heckler hand you something on a platter that you can use.
Yeah.
I will tell you honestly, the joke that I'm most synonymous with before I had a makeover, by the way, on Extreme Makeover, everybody at home, I had a makeover on the show, ABC's Extreme Makeover. But I had all these weak jokes about having a weak chin. And I was at I was the main room, Mark, at the, I don't know if I ever told you this, at the Comedy Store. And I was doing my weak chin jokes. And somebody, and I have no idea who it is, but I'm remarkably grateful, some heckler, could have been another comic in the back. I have no clue. Nobody ever took credit. I was doing my jokes about having a weak chin. It used to take me 3 to 4 hours to change a pillowcase. Somebody yells that out. Okay, it must be tough to change a pillowcase. And it got a giant laugh, I mean, explosive laugh. And I went, thank you, that is comedy gold. And, you know, that's the joke I was most synonymous with, was a heckle. So, you know, if everything I think is gravy and everything is in a plus column, if you allow it to be.
Gravy.
Basically, comics are handed their setups, you know, on the platter is the setup.
You know, yeah, it's true. Let me tell you, one of the things that got me to lose the weight. One night, I was being introduced on stage at the comic strip, and Dom Irrera, I don't know if you know him, AJ, this guy, Dom Irrera, very
Yes, I do remember. He was on Seinfeld, right?
Yeah, he did some bits there, yeah. So anyway, they're introducing me, the guy on stage going, now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, very funny guy. You've seen him, and Dom walks up to me behind me and whispers in my ear. He goes, you are so fat.
Oh, God.
That's what he says. And I go, what? You are so fat. And I went up on stage, and I was at the point I was my fattest, and I couldn't tuck my shirt in, and I had the double chin, and I was sweating. And I went up there, I was so embarrassed. And right away, I owe him a thank you for doing it, because it was like shock treatment. I immediately started losing weight after that.
But you know something, that's the comic repertoire or repartee. That's how comics are with each other. By the way, AJ, you
know, AJ, we used to leave all comedians used to use a tape recorder, you know, a little cassette deck, and we leave it in the back of the room and tape our sets so we could listen to that night. And a lot of times other comics would go and talk into the cassette while we were taping it, say things like, that is the worst material I have ever heard in my entire life. Mittleman, that stuff is such garbage. And you get home and you're listening, ready to do some work, and you hear this stuff.
Can I tell you a shocking thing about taping? We'll go off on it. It's not going to be that funny, but it's a comic's life. Okay, I'm going to tag on to what you just said. So I was in Toledo, and Sheila Kay was my opening act. It was very funny. Okay, and she goes on, and there's a guy there that's drunk and heckling her a little bit, but she got through her like 20 minutes. Then I had to do like 45 minutes. The pressure was on me because it was the first time my brother was seeing me live ever in my career. And he had just got married, and so he drove all the way with another couple from Chicago to Toledo. And that's a hell of a drive. So I wanted to do well, and I'm taping my act, right? And I go up there, and I had a joke, and the start of the joke was, and now a word from the National Rifle Association. And this guy, who was otherwise okay, yells out something very dark. Shoot the NIGGERS, okay? Now, I didn't have the chops, like, you know, I said before, how you mature as a comedian and you can deal with anything. I stopped on a dime and I went and lectured him for 5 minutes, okay? 5 minutes. I didn't know how to recover from that. And then a second later, after I'm trying to get back in my act, a guy yells out from stage right, shoot the KIKES. Okay, now I stopped talking to the guy that was heckling over there. It was just shocking. And I'm aware my brother's there. I want to kill, but I'm tanking it, like this story probably. And I stop and I lecture the KIKES heckler. And then I'm supposed to do 45 minutes. After like 20 minutes, I can't get any other laugh out of the audience. Okay. Now I close the show early. I go over to my brother and I go, I'm so sorry, you know, and that's the end of that. And now a guy comes over, taps me on the shirt and says, listen, I really feel bad. I know you were thrown, but I didn't yell out, shoot the KIKES. I yelled out, shoot that guy. So I was so flustered. Now I look like a total idiot. I went into this whole story, but I will tell you, I have that show on tape. I taped it. So I have that one of the worst shows in my life. And I'm sorry I told the story, but anyway, it is a comic taping his show. Anyway.
One night, can I tell them a real quick one, AJ?
Yeah, absolutely. Then I just want to read some of the funny comments when you have a chance.
So one night, Tim, because I wrote a book called I Killed. I don't know if you know about it. You should look it up. It's really a Bible of the road. And it's road stories by 200 comedians. It's called I Killed, True Stories of the Road, and Random House book. So Tim Allen told this story one night, very short. He's on stage, the guy's heckling him. He's on stage, the guy's heckling him. And Tim Allen says, if you don't shut up, I'm going to come off stage. So the guy heckles him again. Tim Allen gets off stage, goes over the guy and punches him in the face and knocks out a tooth. Right? After the show, Tim realizes that he actually punched the wrong guy. It was the guy next to him that was heckling him.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's terrible. I just posted the link to the book, Mark. It looks fantastic. And I just wanted to read a comment from Lisa Kay that I thought was so cute when you were talking about how it's taking its toll on you not being able to get out. And Steve's been able to make people laugh on the street. She suggested a new Netflix show called Comedians Walking the Street Eating Potatoes. So that could be very good. And Colleen had mentioned, Steve, that when you performed at my conference in Vegas, how she was sitting behind Doctors Lyle and Goldhammer and they were cracking up. And it's not easy to make Dr. Goldhammer laugh. So that's pretty cool. And Mark, there's a really fun comment for you from Sharon, who knows who you are and enjoys your comedy. She says, Mark Schiff used to tell a joke about getting stopped by cops and saying he was in a hurry to buy a hat. And then he asked them if they wanted to take a bath. He said, It made me laugh till I cried.
Right. Yeah, people love that routine. That's right. That's right.
I remember Mark and I were driving back. We were like the Bowery Boys. We were driving back in his old Toyota Corolla, I think it was.
Right.
And somebody was honking us. We were coming back from the track, I'm pretty sure. And honking us. We're giving them the finger. And we finally pull over. And somehow Mark's trunk was on fire.
That's right.
You remember that? I don't know how that would happen.
Of course I do.
The trunk would go on fire, but
I do remember that.
that was a pretty dangerous. Anyway, but you know something, Mark and I, we used to we were binge buddies. We'd eat a lot of crap at the best restaurants.
We'd also go every morning. We'd meet around. Comics would get up late in the morning, and we would go to this place called Poachers.
Poachers, yeah.
In New York, a diner. It was like $1.10, and we get 2 or 3 poached eggs, fried potatoes, white toast,
bacon, coffee,
coffee.
Juice.
Why we got fat.
Yeah.
Dina says, did either of you perform at the Holistic Holiday at Sea Cruise? I know the answer, but I'll let you guys answer it.
I got to do that. 2 shows a couple of years ago, and I got to hang with all the eating meals with Clapper and Campbell and everybody. It's just an amazing, the amount of people that I've met and Gregor, and just really great. And the second I walked on board, the power of AJ, like 3 people the first day going, Mitty's mashed potatoes on Weight Loss Wednesday, and just so many people. So it's just it was a great experience. I loved it.
I never did that cruise, but I did many cruises years ago, and I remained a vegan on those cruises, just eating my salads and fresh vegetables, and I would ask the waiters to make something special for me, steamed vegetables. It was. It's not a problem if you want to do it.
No. Colleen says, no more poachers. So what's for breakfast now that you guys are vegan? If you guys want to tell us what your exercise and eating routine is, it's just assuming a regular day at home. I know it's got to be much harder when you're on the road, but you've been at home for 4 months now. So
really easy now. And it's been the easiest in 40 years that I'm not traveling. But basically today I'll have a salad at 12. I'll probably have oatmeal and berries at 2. and dinner at 6. And dinner will be some kind of vegetable something.
Can I grab something? It'd take me 1 second to show you what I'm going to have for lunch.
Absolutely, of course.
Yeah.
So Dina remembers you from the cruise. Dina, who's watching live, and she remembers the chin joke.
Hi, Dina. I'm sure I met you on the ship.
Yeah.
We met so many amazing people on that ship. So yeah, Mark,
So
ready.
for breakfast this morning, I had oatmeal, flax seeds, chia seeds, almond milk, and fruit, berries, watermelon, and hibiscus tea. And for lunch, I bring with me to the office because one of the things you have to do if you're a vegan, I believe, is take responsibility for your own food. You can't eat well, expect other people to cook for you in restaurants and things. You can't. It's just, they're not going to do it. I bring with me every day. So today, I got my little thing here. So as you see, I got cabbage, I got broccoli, and I got Brussels sprouts.
Oh, that looks delicious.
It's unbelievable. And I put a little bit of aminos on it.
Well, guess what you're going to be putting on it in the near future?
Aminos.
No, I mean, you could, but we are going to be sending both of you, because watching live is Thomas Allen and him and his wife Ethel, who own California Balsamic and sponsor the show. You each are getting 2 free bottles of your choice of a very high-end balsamic vinegar, and you are going to love it, Mark, on your vegetables.
We use it.
Yeah.
We use it now.
So that's it. That's my lunch there. And then I have some watermelon with me, and I feel safe, like I don't have to go to a restaurant and tell the guy, don't put this, don't put that, only cook it here.
Yeah, so 2 things I don't miss, restaurants and traveling, it's so much easier. We've got to have AJ killer meals occasionally, been very, very, very beautiful. Very welcoming to Linda and I here in Indio. So
I know, and they've said that.
I've told Mark,
I always wondered in a restaurant, like, in diners, they have the grill, like in the, where the guy cooks in front, he makes the eggs and the bacon. I always wondered if there's something that if you ordered it, that they would refuse to serve you, that would be so bad for you. And I'll tell you what that is. Every time they cook something on the grill, they got that scraper, the spatula, and they scrape it into this little thing that it catches it on the side.
scraps.
If you said to the guy, make me an omelet of that stuff, just take a scoop of that out. Just make me an omelet of that. And the guy would have to go, get out of my restaurant.
Yeah.
It's so bad for you, you'll probably drop dead right here.
I will tell you right now, I used to do what you're saying in a weird way. I bought, when I thought I was trying to be healthier, I got the George Foreman grill, and if you know how it works, AJ, right? The tray drips everything down, and you get a little tray. And I used to make either salmon or turkey burgers, probably, because I thought that was healthier. And then you know what I would do with the drippings on the tray? I pour it right back on the fish or the burgers. And I would.
Disgusting. You're a disgusting human being.
I would drink the tray. That's how wise I was.
Truly unbelievable.
Yeah.
I used to eat half a pound of bacon every morning for breakfast.
Half a pound.
Yeah.
God.
And I thought it was healthy for me because I would actually put it in the oven and bake it rather than fry it. I thought, well, if I bake it, it's healthy. You got these concepts, you think, it'd be better like that.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, Sharon wants to know, when and why did you go vegan?
Well, I was, again, I had my high blood pressure, my high cholesterol, but I had, what really happened was I had an aha moment. One day I was walking in the street. I was like 50 years old, and I dropped my keys, and I had trouble bending down at 50 to pick them up. And I said, you are screwed, my friend. This can only lead to a terrible thing. Like one, and my friend, I was with Jerry Seinfeld one day. I had 2 things happen. One day, I worked with Seinfeld. We traveled together, and there was this poor guy with a walker. And Jerry points to the guy and says, if you exercise and take care of yourself, there's a good chance you don't ever have to use one of those. And I immediately, again, started exercising every day, and I never looked back. And that's what happened. You know, little things, all of a sudden a window opened. I looked out, I saw what I was being shown, and I grabbed a hold of it and never looked back.
So along those lines, I'm going to answer the question as if you asked me the question, and I mentioned it before. I looked at my grandfather who died when my father was 13 of an aneurysm, and I looked at my dad who had a stroke at 60, around 60, and then the 4 heart attacks. And I said, I sometimes you can learn somebody else's lessons, you know? You learned from that guy and with the walker, right? You learned somebody else's lesson. It's not only how much am I beating myself up in life where I can make a change. You can learn from observing. You don't have to have a low bottom. And just observing my family history, I didn't want to repeat that. You know, God forbid, I wouldn't want to have a stroke. So far, so good. And I'm trying to avoid and fend off all this family stuff. Genetics load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. I don't want to pull the trigger, right?
Steve tells 2 incredibly funny things about his father. When he's in the hospital, his father just had open heart surgery or heart surgery. And Steve went to visit him, and he walks in, his father was eating strawberry shortcake, right?
Yeah. They served him strawberry shortcake and pork. And this was a guy.
Right after a heart attack,
pork in the hospital.
And strawberry shortcake. And the second thing was Steve's father just had surgery, and he opens his eyes, and the first thing he says to Steve is not like, good to see you, I'm glad I'm alive. He goes, would you check my lottery ticket?
Yeah, that was after the stroke. Yeah, that was a stroke. But my father, I went to his cardiologist with him, and he had these angina attacks and angina pills, nitroglycerin tablets 3 times a day. And I was doing a gig in Chicago, AJ, the Ambassador East, which you might know in Chicago, right? So when I got my dad home and I had my mom, I was there for 3 days between my 2 weeks at the Ambassador East. And it was like, well, I screamed at both of them. I said, Dad, because the doctor he was a twin for George Wendt. He was like 5 feet tall, 200 pounds, and smoked. And this is the cardiologist. And I said, Dad, you've got to stop eating this and this and this. Mom, you have to stop making all this fried food and eat all this animal product food. And my dad went from 3 nitroglycerin tablets a day to 3 in a year. 3 in a year.
Wow.
So that's an amazing, it's, back to McDougall, it's the food, it's the food. At least in my family, I think it's the food, a great deal of it.
Mine too.
Hey guys, do you think that stand-up comedy would be able to continue if alcohol wasn't served at clubs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too, because I think people just love to laugh. They love the escape.
In Alcoholics Anonymous, they have nightclub things where they have at the clubs, they have dry nights where people just go and they have club sodas or whatever, and the whole audience is and it's fine.
But you know something, those audiences, because I've done those audiences and Mark's done them, they'll laugh like nobody's ever laughed, because I think they're also so grateful, and they're comprehending the material in a much clearer way than a drunk crowd would be.
But most people aren't drunk. Most people aren't drunk at these clubs, so they have a drink or two, and they're
But it just seems like it loosens them up, because it seems like comedians get funnier as the show goes on, even though, I mean, I don't drink, so not from my perception. That's why the fact that you made me laugh as a non-drinker, that means you were funny, because I almost never laugh out loud. I kind of laugh in my head thinking, oh, that was funny. But I'm just wondering if alcohol wasn't there, how funny some comedians would be.
Well, alcohol is in a lot of areas, and
I don't think it makes a career. I think if somebody only did well in front of drunk audiences, they wouldn't rise up to whatever,
Well, but how important is the audience? And the reason I ask that is because, Mark, you were saying you're missing performing. I've been doing stand-up on Zoom, and I find that it's not as gratifying because there's like a delay. And so I say the joke and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, it was funny. Like you need an audience for stand-up, right?
yeah, you do, of course. You
So
do.
I will tell you, I've done like 3 stand-up gigs, on virtual gigs, for like corporate kind of gigs. And each time the person, I said, well, you want to unmute everybody, unmute them. And they go, you don't want to keep the audience on mute? I'm going, no, how do I hear the laughs? How do I play off the laughs? You need the laughter.
Right.
If you have a whole mute audience, how do you do comedy, basically? So it's like doing the Grand Canyon. You need to hear the laughter. That's all.
What's the smallest audience you've ever performed for?
One.
I mean, for a gig?
Yeah. Like, have you ever gotten there and it's like, nobody's here?
Yeah, I've performed to like 4 people.
Yeah.
6 people.
I did a boardroom with about 10 people, like where it was a like professional gig, where people were in training for like a day or day and a half. They want to lighten it up at the end of that, and
Comedy clubs are like that. Like at night, the last person on sometimes. Remember one night at the Improv in New York, they said, you want to go on? There's only one guy left. And I said, sure. And I went on.
Yeah. And literally those late night crowds, you would have people with their head down sleeping on the table, but it was somebody breathing. So you felt like it was.
If a waiter, one of the wait staff laughs at your jokes,
Yeah.
You got something. Because
Yeah.
they hear so many different comedians and routines that if you actually get this out of a waitress,
Yeah.
you're onto something.
I remember doing twice the Improv where Mark and I met. One time they had a leak, so you had literally water coming into the club, and if you can make people laugh, which I did, in that circumstance, it's just the greatest training in the world. One time they had a cat there, and the cat was chasing a mouse or a rat during my set, and I still got some laughs. I'm going, God, I know I'm wearing this New York, it's a Mets, sweatshirt or whatever, or shirt. And I think there's something too, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. If you can make that one drunk laugh, you're building a comedy muscle. Whoops. Hey, look at that.
Probably another YouTube show calling you to be on.
That's
So
a reminder to eat. How do you like that?
that's interesting that you have to be reminded.
Well, no, noon breakfast.
Okay. So Sharon wants to know, are either of you guys doing any comedy online right now that people can watch?
Yeah. On my Facebook, I do a character 3 days or 4 days a week called Babbi, B-A-B-B-I, like Rabbi, Babbi Schiff. And on my Facebook, and what I do, she can look at it, it's like 20 or 30 of them on there.
When I go to Mark Schiff on Facebook, there's so many. Is there another word I can use to find the correct Mark Schiff?
Yeah.
Oh, Mark Schiff comedian or Mark Schiff?
It's funny. I had 2 Facebooks. One, I don't.
If you can email me the link, Mark, I'll put it in the show notes. I won't be able to link to
But I
it
do
right
this
now.
character, and I talk about what's going on currently in the world, funny stuff, and then I do some jokes from some old jokes from Milton Berle's collection.
So I will say that. Sorry if you were done. I don't know if you're done.
I am.
But if you go to YouTube, I've got kind of 20 different things on there. Plus, I'm an auctioneer and a host. So if anybody, actually, people have done virtual auctions. And so I do, events, could be something in person. but not during this COVID time. But if somebody needs a comedian for a virtual event or a private party, either a corporate gig or a birthday party or a bar mitzvah or a wedding or anything, could be a couple at home, like you said, the smallest crowd ever. Years ago, I wrote for this impressionist, David Fry, who was famous for doing
Nixon.
And the smallest crowd he ever did was this couple hired him to sit at their table at a restaurant and entertain them. So he obviously paid him really well. He was a famous impressionist.
I did a funeral one time. A friend of mine, George, his wife died of 63 years. She was married to her.
I've met her. She's great.
Gally, 63 years they were married. We went to the cemetery, buried her. And then we went back to the synagogue. Everybody went back to have something to eat and tell some stories about. So George says to me, can you do 15 minutes? And I said, George, they just buried your wife like an hour ago. He goes, yeah, but she always liked your comedy. And I actually did 15 minutes there at the funeral thing. It was really, it was fun.
That's cool. I would love to have a comedian at my funeral, but I don't know if you guys will be there.
Yeah, well.
I'm booked.
Yeah, you're booked. Here's a great question. What advice would you give to somebody that wants to be a comedian today?
I would say find any kind of audience, get on stage as much as you possibly can. Develop a muscle where you could, of trying out material. You have to, those are the two, I think, the two legs, not the tripod, but also you got to be able to network and things like that. Maybe that's a tripod, but go out there, get on stage anywhere you can, because stage time is key. Look how I, went on stage in front of people vacuuming, and the other thing is keep trying stuff out. Keep trying stuff out.
What would you say, Mark?
Yeah, same. Basically, he nailed it. When I was first starting out, I went to this comedian, Ed Bluestone. Ed was a very funny comedian. I said, how do you become a comedian? He goes, okay, you write jokes, you memorize them, and you do them. And it's the same thing now as it was then. It's no different. You write jokes, you memorize them, and you do them. That's it. That's the whole ball of wax. Nobody can help you. Nobody can open the door for you. Your parents can be the most famous comedian in the world. They cannot help you become funnier.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine, Steve Gelbstein, and I would write material all the time. And whenever I tried a joke out on him and he didn't like it, I knew it was going to kill. Every time he didn't get it off stage, but on stage, if he saw me on stage, he would get it and the audience would get it. So you got to try things out, have an inner crew of people that you can just try material out on, but you got to get on stage.
Strangers, in front of strangers.
Strangers.
Have you guys ever bombed, and how did you recover from that?
I think most comics that have done this a long time, and I'm 43, 44 years now. I'm not advocating that you bomb, but you can learn a lot from bombing. And sometimes, it's a big bruise because you want to do well. Sometimes it's a gig and you want to do well, but usually it goes very well. But you can learn from it. Sometimes it's circumstantial. It's not always your fault. It could be you're following two blue acts and you're a clean comic, and they're just the blue acts take the sting out of the room, but you try not to perform in those situations, but it's usually situational.
So when you performed at that funeral, you literally killed.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's funny.
Right.
Yeah.
Comedians always have that, I killed them, I murdered them, I slaughtered them, I destroyed them. It's very violent. What you say you've done that night.
Nobody likes to go, I got a lot of nods. People just nodded a lot.
Jennifer wants to know, what foods do you guys miss the most, if any?
Not anymore. I don't miss anything anymore. I think missing a food it gets back to the pleasure trap. It's, you know, it's just an association. It's not, there's an expression, nothing tastes as good as feeling good feels. And there's nothing that will compare with how I feel.
Right.
So
I don't really miss anything either, but if I wanted to blow it out today, give me a hot pastrami on rye, soft rye bread with mustard and coleslaw on it, an order of French fries and a banana split.
And we can do that all vegan now, Mark.
yeah, that's right. See, actually, I've had AJ's, you know, like the fudge balls. What do they call them? The fudge
Peanut butter fudge truffles.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't really need to go for a candy bar. You know what I mean? It's all, you know, I'd say guilt-free, you know? So, yeah, but
There was a diner where I used to live, called oh God, I can't remember the name of it now for some reason. But anyway, what they did was on your birthday, they would give you free ice cream. Sunday, you brought your proof. But also they had something called the kitchen sink, and it was 32 scoops of ice cream.
Was it Jan's?
Was it Farrell's?
It was Jan's. That's right, Jan's, Queens Boulevard.
On Queens Boulevard, yeah.
And if you could eat the whole 32 scoops by yourself, you get it for free.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh,
I never even attempted that, but I would see these gigantic cab drivers come in, and they would bring this giant bowl with ice cream, and they would just eat the whole flipping thing. It was extraordinary to watch.
Wow, they do that now at that there's some hamburger place where Heart Attack Grill or something like that. So last question. Oh, you know, there used to be a place called Farrell's that had a trough, and if you ate the whole trough, you got a ribbon that said, "I made a pig of myself at Farrell's," and I actually do have one of those ribbons. I'm not so proud to say. All right, guys. So last question. Now that we talked about it's appropriate for comedians to be performing at funerals, which comedian do each of you guys want at your funeral?
Oh God. Well, I think I prefer getting cremated, but that doesn't matter. It could be a memorial. Who would I want at the funeral?
No, I mean to do the, you know, because if it was a thing now where instead of rabbis, we hired comedians to officiate, who do you want at yours?
I got to think that over. My favorite comedian of all time, if they were dead or alive, I'd say Jack Benny. I love. And I'm sorry I never met him, because I've met so many greats. I'd have to think it over, really.
Yeah.
You know something, I'd want Mark there, and I knew it would be funny.
Yeah.
Our friends Billy Reback and Tom Stern, I think they would be funny. I would want people laughing, just like your friend said about asking you to do 15 minutes. I want people to have fun and fond memories and laughter. And who knows you better than your close friends? So,
Right.
Yeah.
From the old time guys, I would like a guy like Alan King.
I loved him.
Yeah, I'd love to him to do my funeral about.
Linda's dad was one of his closest friends was Alan King.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be something to have Alan King.
Wow. Nice. Well, hopefully that won't happen anytime soon, because you guys are awesome vegans, eat right, you exercise, you have a great accountability system. And thank you so much for coming on today. It was really fun catching up with you guys. And I hope things open up for you guys so that you can get back doing what you love and what you do so well.
AJ,
Thank you, AJ.
I watched so many of these AJ lives, and I'm kicked. It's a kick to be on this. And thank you for having us.
Yeah, and if you guys come back, you can come back, but the second time you gotta cook. That's the rule.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. And thanks you guys so much for watching today. Please come back tomorrow at 11 a.m. when we have a food demo from an extraordinary chef who owns the restaurant in Inglewood called Stuff I Eat. Her name is Babette Davis. She's gorgeous. She could do her age in push-ups, and I believe she's like 70 now, so you don't want to miss that. Thanks again, Mark and Steve.
Thank you so much. Bye. See you in minutes.